So the aim of this tutorial is for you by the end of it to be able to design your own periodized training program. Now this is applicable in either your PAP or your performance assessment where you have this sort of year, 18 months, 2-year window where you can be sort of preparing and practicing in the background of your theory lessons, and you can be getting yourself ready for your final performance assessment. So in your PAP, obviously if you design a training program, then you'll be completing it, reviewing it, reflecting upon it. So then by the end, you can reflect and evaluate the whole process. Whereas for your performance assessment, it's not necessarily essential for you to complete a training program, especially a periodized one. But if you do, and you run this alongside your PAP at the same time, not only will you get more experience in completing and then carrying out a training program, but you'll also be more likely to make progress in your chosen physical activity for your performance assessment. And if you make that progress in line with the standards which are outlined in the specification, you're more likely to perform well in your performance assessment. So it's sort of dual pronged, this design tutorial really, because if you can set one up, then you can make it work for your PAP or your performance assessment. So we're going to dive in, and there's 7 steps. The first one is to make sure that you've completed some form of performance analysis to start with. And ideally, this will be your current level of skill, so right at the beginning. So in either your PAP or your performance assessment, you need to have already used the observation checklist, or you've got some video footage or some pictures, some slow-mo, some evidence of where you're currently at. And from that, you can then move on to step 2, which is to produce performance goals. And once you have these performance goals, what you can then start to work on is this SMART target setting. So to make sure that it's specific, make sure that it's measurable, make sure that it's achievable, make sure that it's realistic or time bound, all of these key words that can help you create these performance goals, which are really going to help you keep the focus and to make sure that your training is specific. Okay, because you don't want to do some sort of vague performance goal and then you haven't really got any real direction on where to take your training to elicit thought out and predetermined goals and results by the end. So you need to complete some sort of performance analysis. That might include a fitness test battery. So a group or a selection of standardized fitness tests that you can complete at the start, collect your data, and then periodically, so it might be each month or every 2 months, you repeat the same fitness test battery with the same parameters, and you can watch your physical fitness improve over time. So you will need a mixture of quantitative and qualitative evidence, but just make sure that's done before you start to complete your training program. Make sure you've got your SMART targets, and once you've done that, you can then start to come into designing a training program. And the first thing that you want to do is identify the components of fitness which are most relevant to each of your goals. Now, with your PAP, you'll need 4 performance goals. With your performance assessment, it's not as essential to have 4. Okay, the more important thing or the prudent thing for you to do will be to look at the specification to identify the core and the basic skills, then sort of develop those into a list of more specific skills for that sport, some more complex skills, and build your goals around what the assessor and what your teacher is going to be marking you on. Because if you can prepare yourself to be able to perform better in your actual assessment, then you're going to fare better overall. So if you have that end goal in mind, first of all, we need to almost work back, and we need to work on the components of fitness which are going to be important to achieve those end goals. Because once you've got those, we'll then be able to move on to periodization. Now, you might have covered this already, you might not have, but broadly speaking, periodization is this long-term look training. And we've got 3 different sections. We've got macrocycles, mesocycles, and microcycles. Now, a macrocycle in your situation is going to be to produce either a successful PAP or a successful performance analysis, but a successful end performance. That's your macrocycle target. We're not preparing at the moment for a county performance or a national performance or a 2 or 3 year long goal to become national champion or something like that. For you at the moment, for this training program, it'll be to produce a successful performance by the end. Your mesocycles, well, they're your progress towards each performance goal. Because if you've created this overall aim of a better or the most efficient and effective performance possible at the end, well, you've got 3 or 4 performance goals, which you know if you hit each one of those, well, that's going to contribute to an overall better performance assessment. So your 3 or 4 performance goals, they're going to make up your mesocycles, your medium-term goals. Macro, we're talking a year, 18 months out. And for this example, we're going to be dealing with 12 months. Mesocycle, that then breaks things down a little bit more. 3-month targets, 4-month targets. And then your microcycle targets, they're your week by week, month by month, even session by session. What do you intend to achieve or hit in your training sessions daily, weekly, monthly? And if you were to hit all of those weekly and monthly targets, then that will almost lend itself, or that will lead into you achieving your 4 mesocycle targets. And if you successfully achieve your 4 mesocycles, that should mean you achieve your one main chief goal, which is a successful performance. So what I'm going to show you is how we actually sort of create a periodized training plan. So what I'll start with by showing is an example. Now, it's probably going to look quite sort of colourful to start with, and I'll explain each one, and I'll sort of break it down so you can copy this. But what you'll see is that there's 3 layers. We've got this top layer, we've got this middle layer with 4 different colours, and then we've got this bottom layer, which is fairly multicoloured at the moment. Now, if I just take this away for the time being, and I'll build it up from the start, what you'll want to do is first of all, create a table. So if we go down into insert a table, and you'll need 12 columns. Each column is going to be representing a month. Rows will be needing 3 because we've got macro cycle targets, meso, and then micro. Now, at the moment, that's a little bit small. So if we just increase the row height, there we go. Now we can see it a little bit more. Now, to start with, what I would recommend is we just label them month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So you've now got this 12-month, this annual training program that you're going to be able to work on. Now, obviously, it depends on when you're starting this. It could be September, October, November, whenever it is. But obviously, month 1 will be the month that you're starting in. It'll obviously run throughout the year. You can add on extra months. You can take them away. You can block out certain ones if you've got holiday or things like that. That's completely flexible. But we've just got this rough start, this rough guide for an annual plan. And we know that the macro cycle, this main target that we want to achieve, is a successful performance assessment, or PAP performance. So we just merge all of those cells together, and we've got this larger macro target of successful performance. I'll just say successful performance assessment. So it almost works almost like a pyramid. If we achieve the 12 things at the bottom, that will help achieve the middle row. That will help achieve this one main goal up at the top. So what goes in the middle? Well, there are performance goals. So just like we were mentioning back here, just like we were mentioning back here about we need to have produced those 3 or 4 performance goals on the back of our analysis. Well, that's now where we need them. That's where we apply them. So if we flick back to periodization, if you have 4 performance goals, then we need to spread these. Just merge those. So we've now got 4 separate sections, which hopefully you can start to see are dividing our year up. So we'd have goal 1. We'd have goal 2, goal 3, and then goal 4. Now, at this point, you've got 2 options. You can either separate your year into these goal sections. So the first 3 months, you focus on goal 1, second batch of 3 months, goal 2, etc. And then by the end of this year, you would have hit all 4 and then you would have done a successful performance. However, what we're not really seeing there is we don't return to the work. So that would look a little bit like this, where if we take each colour as the work that we complete towards each separate goal, we do all of the work for a particular goal in one particular part of the year, which might not be the most effective because, well, what about goal 1? By the time we get to the end of the year, are we still going to have those gains? If we think about principles of training, reversibility, and things like that, well, if we haven't addressed that goal for 9 months of the year, is it still going to be the same level that we got it to at the start of the year? So you can do that if you want to, it just might not be the most effective. So what we can do is start to spread them out. So we can come into our colours. So we go red, green. Tell you what will be easier. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that will stay green. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it would go blue. Blue and blue, and then we would do some yellow. So you're now seeing that we could distribute our training throughout the year. Put some more red in. So we can distribute our training evenly throughout the year so that we end up with, we hit each goal throughout the whole year. So we're not leaving something at the until the very end. We're not doing something at the start and then forgetting about it. We can create this, and you can play around with that according to interests, time of year. So that's just a bit of a random distribution there, but they've all been hit 3 times. So they still get the same amount of attention, but that attention is spread out throughout the course of this year. So now what do we need to do? Well, if we flip back to our steps, we now need to go into our mesocycle and we need to unpack that into the microcycles. So we start to focus in now month by month, so that we can now pull out almost a month's worth of training plans and complete them, but we know that it's going to funnel into our overall annualized training plan. So what might that look like? Well, if we come into this section here, you can see that I've got this document labeled month 1. So that would be from my periodization table over here. So month number 1 would be working on goal number 1, which I've created on the back of my performance analysis. So I now, when I'm working for this whole month, I should be thinking about goal number 1. Well, we can get even more specific, because if we now start to look at weekly sessions, we can start to think Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We start to think about, well, how do I want to spread my training types out, thinking about my principles of training of rest, recovery, intensity, adaptation, progressive overload. What am I going to do specifically Monday through Sunday? When am I going to have my rest days? When am I going to have my high intensity training days? When is going to be low intensity? Are they focused on the components of fitness relevant to the performance goal which I'm currently working on? Yes or no? So with all of this information in mind, we can now start to complete an individual training session. So individual, I just put here sets, reps, type, equipment, intensity. Now, all of the principles of training that we need to address in each training session, we can now start to create the framework for them. And we know that it's building into our mesocycles. We know it's building into our macro goal of a successful performance at the end. Now, I've also put in this box here, reflection, because after a training session, you could put in hard, easy, boring, exciting. If you've already covered the work on reflecting on training programming, which will come towards the end of your year, But we take a step back from the training programs that we have planned and completed, and we look at what went well. What were the challenges? What did I enjoy? What didn't I enjoy? What would I change next time? And if we think about the principles of overload, adaptation, we need to make sure that we build on our reflections so that next time we complete this training session, we make it a little bit harder or a little bit easier, and we tweak it to make it better. So what we can then do is, once we've completed that for the week and we've reflected on each session, we could build in a rest day here and there to make sure that we're not overtrained. You can make sure that this is aligned in real life to your school PE days. So you know that you're at school, well, should be at school, Monday through to Friday. When are your PE lessons? When are your practical PE lessons, which are dedicated to your own personal training? If they're Tuesday and Thursday, well, that could be when you schedule a training session which avails of school equipment. But then at the weekend, you might do something which doesn't require equipment, such as a 5-kilometer run, which is developing aerobic endurance, which is a particularly important component of fitness if your performance goal is to increase the distance I cover in the total match length of football or soccer or something like that. So we can start to pad out our whole weekly training plan, and then once you've got 1 week, you can just highlight that, Control Copy, Control V, and we've now got week 2. So once you've got 4 weeks all planned out, you're done for the month. You can now just take this training plan or print it off, keep it in a file, and every time that you go into a PE lesson, you can then look at the day, look at the week of the month, and complete that personal training program, complete your reflection, and then you know that that is going to be building out into your overall periodized annual training program. So if we finish off, we just go back to our final steps here. We know that we need to complete some performance analysis. We know that we need to create performance goals. We know we need to apply smart target setting. We then need to identify the components of fitness and the training types that we can incorporate that will actually benefit our performance goal progress. Then we can periodize. Macro goal, success in our performance. Meso goals, success and progress towards our 3 or 4 performance goals. Microcycle targets, the individual, the 12 months worth of training plans that you can plan out in advance and then pick up and complete and reflect on every time that you go to do a training session. And if you do those 7 things and you complete that as best as you can, then you would have done an effective periodized training plan, and hopefully you achieve your macro goal of a successful performance. So I hope that design tutorial was helpful. You can find the skeleton documents that I was showing you there within the portal. So if you do want those to work from, then just download those and pick them up from there. If not, open up your own documents and you can complete something similar to what I just did, but from scratch. So I hope that helped. See you next time.